Did you hear about the woman who bragged about taking another woman's man and he ended up murdering her in front of her son? In 2022, a woman from Gary, Indiana named Arianna Miles shared a Facebook post with a screenshot of the first text message she ever sent to her boyfriend. She wrote, "You got a bitch?" And he replied, "Yeah." And she wrote, "You want a better one?" And he replied, "I wouldn't mind." She captioned the post, "How it started versus how it's going."
What does it sound like the moment a fairy tale dies? Is it a scream? A sob? Or is it the staticky, panicked voice of a man on a 911 call saying the words, "My girlfriend, she's been shot"? But before the dispatcher can even ask another question, another voice cuts through the noise. A weak, fading whisper from the background. A woman's voice, asking a question that would hang in the air of that Gary, Indiana home long after the sirens faded. Why would you do that? This is not just the story of a domestic dispute that turned deadly. This is the story of Arianna Miles, a woman known online as Milani and Charles LeFlore Franklin. It's a story about the persona we project to the world versus the reality we live behind closed doors. It's about a promise to save a life, tragically cut short by the very person she let into her home. Before we unravel this tragedy, I want to give a huge shout out to our True Crime Unraveled family on YouTube and our True Crime Unraveled TV crew on Facebook and TikTok. We see every single comment, every theory, and every shared story. You all are the reason we do this. Keep them coming. So, how does a love story that began with a boastful Facebook post end with a 911 call and a chilling final question? Arianna Miles, at 26, was a woman of two worlds. Online, she was Milani, vibrant, outspoken, and full of fire. She built a community, shared her life, and wasn't afraid to speak her mind. But to those who knew her intimately, she was so much more. She was described as having a pure heart, the kind of person who would give you the shirt off her back. Literally. Her best friend was battling kidney disease, and Arianna didn't just offer moral support. She got tested. She was a perfect match. In a world that can often be cruel, Arianna made the ultimate promise. From now on, call us the One Kidney Twins. Love you more, boo-boo. This for life and after. Always told you I got you. She was planning to be a nurse, to make caring for others her life's work. She was a mother. She was a friend. She was, by all accounts, the glue for many people in her life. But there was another thread running through Arianna's story. In 2022, she saw a man named Charles LeFlore Franklin on Facebook. And she sent a message that, in hindsight, feels like a scene from a tragedy waiting to happen. "You got AB?" she wrote. He confirmed he did. "You want a better one?" she asked. His reply was, "I wouldn't mind." She posted this exchange proudly. How it started versus how it's going. It was a classic social media flex, a public declaration of winning. But what was really going on behind that screen? Charles LeFlore Franklin was not the man he appeared to be in those matching Christmas pajamas. The system knew him differently. He was a convicted felon from Cook County, Illinois, classified as a serious violent felon. This legal label wasn't just a bureaucratic term. It was a bright red line that legally prohibited him from even touching a firearm. Yet, inside the home he shared with Arianna and their infant son on Pennsylvania Street in Gary, authorities would find a sawed-off shotgun. The very instrument of her death. The fairy tale facade began to crumble long before November 2025. By then, the social media posts had changed. The boasts of love were replaced by the reality of arguments. She discovered he was cheating. She was fed up. She wanted him out. But removing a man like Charles Franklin was not as simple as changing a relationship status. The system was already trying to sound an alarm. He had a domestic battery charge pending from April of that year. Another charge for intimidation from May. The walls were closing in on him, and Arianna was the one holding the blueprint. So, what happens when a man with a history of violence, facing the loss of his home and freedom, is confronted by the one person who knows all his secrets? The argument that night was the culmination of months, maybe years of tension. Their 11-month-old son was in the room as the yelling escalated into a physical struggle. two different stories would emerge from that living room. Charles's version was one of a tragic accident. He claimed Arianna grabbed the gun from the closet during the fight, and in the tussle, it just went off. But the evidence, and more importantly, the sounds on that 911 call, tell a different story. When the dispatcher asked the pivotal question, was the shooting intentional? There was a hesitation. A pause that stretched just a second too long before a quiet no. And in that silence, you hear her. Arianna, with what strength she had left, asks the question that haunts this case. Why would you do that? When police arrived, she was on the sofa, suffering from a catastrophic gunshot wound. Her final words to the officers were a plea for safety, a final act of self-preservation. Please, get him away from me. She was pronounced dead at the hospital. The scene told its own story. A sawed-off shotgun. 5 12-gauge shotgun shells scattered on the floor. What was the sequence of events that led to those shells being dispersed around the house? That is a question only Charles Franklin can answer. The investigation, led by Detective Brian McCall, moved quickly. Within 48 hours, Charles LeFlore Franklin was charged with murder, unlawful possession of a firearm by a serious violent felon, domestic battery, intimidation, and a host of other charges. With his prior record, he's looking at the very real possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison, upwards of 85 years. But the true cost of that night can't be measured in years behind bars. It's measured in the empty space left behind. Arianna's best friend, the one waiting for a kidney, had to post a different kind of tribute. A eulogy for a future that would never be. She wrote, "We was so excited about being kidney twins, but God had other plans. This was not supposed to happen to you, my girl." The woman who promised to give the gift of life had her own life taken. The irony is as profound as the tragedy is deep. So, we're left to piece it all together. The vibrant social media star, the selfless friend and mother, the woman who confidently slid into a man's DMs, and the woman who died asking her killer, why? This story forces us to look past the online glitz and the easy judgments. It forces us to see the human being behind the profile. Arianna Miles was so much more than a viral post. She was a life full of potential, brutally and unnecessarily extinguished. This case leaves us with heavy questions that go beyond the courtroom. Does the justice system do enough to protect victims of domestic violence when red flags are already waving? How much does social media blind us to the realities of a dangerous relationship? And what responsibility do we have to look out for the friends and loved ones who might be in a similar situation? We at True Crime Unraveled want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this tragic story? Let us know in the comments below on YouTube or over on our Facebook and TikTok pages at True Crime Unraveled TV. We read every single one. If this deep dive into the story of Arianna Miles impacted you, please help us spread the word by giving this video a thumbs up and sharing it. It makes a world of difference. For more investigations into the stories that lie beneath the headlines, subscribe to True Crime Unraveled and hit the notification bell. We are committed to unraveling the truth, one story at a time. Thank you for watching, and please take care of yourselves and each other out there.
Did you hear about the woman who bragged about taking another woman's man and he ended up murdering her in front of her son? In 2022, a woman from Gary, Indiana named Arianna Miles shared a Facebook post with a screenshot of the first text message she ever sent to her boyfriend. She wrote, "You got a bitch?" And he replied, "Yeah." And she wrote, "You want a better one?" And he replied, "I wouldn't mind." She captioned the post, "How it started versus how it's going. Merry Christmas," with pictures of her and him in matching pajamas. Unfortunately, the love affair didn't fizzle out. They went on to move in together and then have a child over the next few years. By November 2025, Arianna became fed up with how her boyfriend Charles was treating her. So she started arguing with him, telling him that she wanted to kick him out. She brought up the fact that he wasn't treating her right, and she found out he was cheating on her, and she was just completely fed up. Although their 11-month-old son was in the room, they started arguing back and forth and fighting, and then their argument turned into a physical fight and they began tussling. Charles said during the fight, she grabbed the gun from the closet and then it just went off. But the police don't believe his version of events, because when he called 911 to report that she had been shot, the dispatcher asked him, was the shooting intentional? And he hesitated before saying no. As soon as he responded, you could hear Arianna in the background asking him, why would you do that? And then she whimpered, I'm dying. When police arrived, they found Arianna suffering on the sofa with a gunshot wound, and she told them, please get him away from me. Just after she made it to the hospital, Arianna was pronounced dead. Police arrested Charles, but then they learned that this wasn't the first time that he got in trouble for fighting with Arianna, and they had to show up. Charles already had a domestic battery charge pending from April and an intimidation charge from May. Police also found 5 12-gauge shotgun shells on the floor all around the house, and they have no idea how they got there. Charles was scheduled to appear in court for the domestic battery charges this week, but now he's facing up to 85 years in prison for murder. It turns out taking this man from another woman ended up being a blessing for the other woman and a curse for Arianna. What do you think of this story? Leave a comment to let me know. I'm Tiara with the T.